All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of VR Download, a weekly show where we discuss all the amazing new fun news and headlines and things like that in the VR industry. I am your host, Kyle, and over here to the left, I have.
Hello, everyone. Ian Hamilton joining you from Arkansas, middle of the United States, with my hands. And I've got my cat in here doing no good in this room. We've got these tablets here, and if I reach forward through the tablets, I can accidentally cast things to Stevie the TV. And I was gonna have to throw a piece of clothing at the cat to get him from stopping messing with things on my table. And luckily the cat has now. I've scared it off the table without having to throw clothing at it, and without accidentally casting things. So everything's good here, but you might hear a cat meowing just because the cat doesn't like me talking to people that aren't there.
I can totally understand that. Who do we have over here all the way to the left?
I'm David Heaney, joining you from Northern Ireland. The good news is, Ian, I believe you reported that cat tracking is probably coming to Oculus Quest some point.
I would love that. I hope I get to pick an avatar for my cat as well. The cat's doing it again. Cat, stop it. Oh well.
Yeah, well, without pets, I mean, you got to have your pets, right? Luckily, my pets are contained in a 30-gallon aquarium. Gerbils, they don't tend to get in your way when you're doing VR, but, that's just what I got. Hello to everyone out there in YouTube land. Obviously, we are live right now. So if you're in the chat, feel free to leave comments and ask questions and talk about all sorts of fun things, and we will give you shout outs such as Ryan, hello, Traveling Man, hello, Scott, hello, Andrew, Adam, Bass Pilot, hello out there in YouTube land. So, we've already lost Heaney. That's okay. He's probably out tweaking something there. All right. Meow, 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 meow.
And that cat looks like my cat too. That's a perfect little emoji. I've got that's my cat right there. Beautiful emoji. Well, good choice.
Very cool. Very cool. So I'm not really sure if today is a huge news day, but we do have some fun, intriguing things that we can discuss today. Ian, right before we went live, you were talking about something fun that those of us who have an iPhone might get a kick out of.
Yeah, well, a couple things happened right before we came in here. Hugo Barra is leaving Facebook. So he was one of their hardware execs. I think he worked at Google, I think, on Android. I'm trying to remember it. He was one of these people that ended up in that sort of executive structure at Facebook that becomes kind of like a black box to us, because you never know, who's got their hands in which projects on some of these levels. But I think that's about 5 years at Facebook that he was there, and now he's gone. And yeah, the other thing is, let's see if I can put it up there. This is my first time throwing up a video up there. Yeah, so the new feature is iPhone owners can see their iPhone lock screen notifications with version 29 of the Quest software, which should be rolling out over the next couple of weeks if Facebook keeps to its sort of gradual rollout schedule, where they kind of test the waters and make sure that it doesn't cause any super breaking bugs before they kind of give it to everyone. But yeah, that's kind of a big deal, because if you go back to 2016 and the original Vive hitting the market, they kind of promised these features back on that original headset where you could get your phone when you're in VR, and it was pitched as such a big deal, and then it kind of just died, and lots of people didn't even know that feature was even intended to exist. It was, and
I find it very intriguing that this is starting for iOS users, for iPhone people, prior to Android, which is funny because, the Oculus mobile platform here on my skull right now functions with Android. So what gives here? Heaney, do you have any input on this?
Well, I do actually. The problem is that most Silicon Valley workers, especially at companies like Facebook, use iPhones. And I actually remember reading a few years ago that Zuckerberg had to force some of his workers to start using Android phones because he'd noticed that the Android app had started to decline because none of them actually ever used it. So you can in a few seconds.
So we're gonna blame that interruption on the cat. Is that what
Yeah,
we're doing?
the cat pulled the
Yeah.
cord. That's exactly what
Yeah.
happened.
But we're back, meow. So that's good.
No, stop it. Oh, that's the worst. Oh.
Okay. Well, let's see. We've got a few more people here in Smashed Reality. Hello. Vexner, Jeff, Robcraft, Game On Scorpio. Game On Scorpio. Cool. Good stuff. Alan and Meow Mix. Oh, that's good. You see, you've got somebody who wants to come in and sponsor us. Yeah.
Yeah.
VR download brought to you by Meow Mix. I could see saying that in every episode.
Yeah, and Paradise Decay is saying blame the cat. Exactly. The cat pulled the plug. That's what happened. Cat is under my feet right now. There's a toy in the room now. And if I don't hide the toy under my foot, the cat's going to smack it around my room the whole hour. But if I put it under my foot, the cat's going to attack my foot the whole hour. Or do I leave? I don't want to leave the studio, so I'll just deal with it. I'll let the cat attack my foot.
All right. We'll just deal with it, you know?
Hopefully the cat
for
doesn't take
better
down the
or
stream
for
again.
worse. Okay. All right. Well, hey, let's get into the first piece of news here then, so that way we can get some amazing conversation going. So, first piece of news for today is all about the Vive Pro 2 and the Focus 3 getting eye tracking add-on. So neither the HTC Vive Pro 2 nor the Vive Focus 3 features integrated eye tracking, but support will apparently come via an add-on device in the future. And so it's interesting to think that there's, well, first of all, enough room to connect something like an eye tracking device inside these headsets, but then also that they will work and be compatible and actually provide some form of function. What do we know about this, Ian?
Well, it's interesting to see them sort of it's always felt like eye tracking is an add-on for Vive's headsets. So I remember seeing the first eye tracking on, I think it was the original HTC Vive with basically Valve's blessing. So I remember the first demos of eye tracking were kind of like in cooperation with Tobii and with Valve, kind of showing some of the potential that it could add to Facebook's headsets. And obviously, I think, HTC's headsets. And years later, we're still kind of like, they did the Vive Pro Eye. Now they've got this separate add-on. It's weird the kind of way they've gone back and forth on this, where it's integrated, then it's not, it's an add-on. I because it's in this $1,000 to $2,000 range, I get kind of lost on the pricing of all these things. Of like, if I wanted a complete HTC system that was full body tracking from head to toe, so you've got the index controllers, you've got the eye tracking add-on, you use the 3 Vive trackers, 1 on your hip, 2 on your feet, and then you add on the face and lip tracker. It's going to cost you around $2,000, maybe a little bit under that, plus the PC. That's a lot. It's a lot for people to swallow, and come up with that price. But there's people out there that want that, and if you're building for the future, that's the system you probably want as a developer. Like, if you want to figure out what VR apps are going to be big in 5 years' time, you're going to want all of those features inside your system to mess with it and see what you can do. So yes, it's coming, but it's the same sort of thing where you've kind of got to retrofit your system, and that kind of decreases the number of people who can really do this.
Do you have anything to add here, Heaney, on eye tracking?
We've seen HTC partner with this company before. It's a China-based company that provides these add-ons. It's easy to think of it as China's Tobii. I'm not actually Tobii, I think it's pronounced.
Yeah, I think it's Toby. Yeah.
Yeah. So, this Drulon series of products we've seen before, again, it's sort of Ian's point. It's difficult to understand why this isn't integrated in the Focus 3 or the Pro 2, at least as a tiered option. But it's possible that HTC's standard suppliers for this were more expensive, and that this ready existing market that exists in the Chinese market, which is, a very separate market to the West. There are all sorts of headsets, including standalones, that just exist only within the Chinese market and will never come out of it for various legal and kind of practical reasons. And if HTC is more, it's probably not a project that they invested much into. It's probably a one where they went, okay, this company can provide this at a reasonable cost, $299. Let's go with it.
But I always think of foveated rendering as this feature that if you're going to pitch it as part of your platform, it really needs to work way past 99%. Some percentage, 99.99. It has to work 99 that well in order for you to kind of pitch foveated rendering as a integral part of your platform and get all the benefits that foveated rendering brings, which is maybe less horsepower provided by your system, and thus less cost potentially in your PC processor. And because it's an add-on, it suggests to me that they can't really pitch foveated rendering at this time necessarily as an integrated product with a tiered option. And yeah, you can add it on for maybe the social aspects and test it out, or you could build a custom system that maybe works in some avenues for eye tracking and being able to track what your users are looking at. But yeah, foveated rendering, that's one of those things, it's got to be so keyed in to really be a part of your system. And it's just surprising. We've been hearing these VR hardware companies talk about foveated rendering for years, and here we are in 2021 and it's still not here. And that's why we're so with our news last week about Sony being able to integrate gaze tracking into the upcoming headset. We're really anxious to see how good that eye tracking works, to see how integrated into the platform Sony is able to push it.
Yeah, as you say, this is really one of those things where the long tail applies. You have to, getting to 99.999% isn't good enough. It has to be, beyond that, because if the eye tracking system misfinds your gaze, you would see half of the screen is blurry. Then as you started to move your eyes quickly around, even more be blurry, and you would see it. It's one of those things where for it to work, you have to almost not notice that it's there at all. And it seems
Yeah.
like it's going to be difficult to get that integrated into a standalone headset.
That I think is the important thing to keep in mind, is that obviously, you can see there's a cable connection there. There's going to be the eye tracking is going to work the best when the computer is doing all the processing. As soon as you add that extra level of overhead, even to get the foveated rendering, the eye tracking, it might not be practical yet for a standalone headset. Like there might be two. I mean, I don't know, Heaney, you're more of a latency and science guy, but would the tracking going to the headset, computing, and then swapping, pushing back to what we see, is it going to be negligible on a standalone, or will it actually show benefit because of the foveated rendering on a standalone headset with this type of hardware?
Well, so as you're sort of hinting at, there is supporting the eye tracking sensors that would need to be in adds extra compute requirements. These are mobile processors that are in these headsets, and they can't handle an unlimited number of cameras coming in. Usually smartphones these days have, 2 cameras, some of them have 3 or 4, but the idea of having these kind of 4 tracking cameras plus 2 eye tracking cameras and maybe even more eye tracking cameras to get a better result. We heard Zuckerberg talk recently in his interview with The Information about this challenge. He said that it's not only that, but there's also the sheer heat and electrical requirements of adding all these extra sensors. And it comes to the point where these companies are going to have to do some innovation in reducing the power and compute requirements of those sensors. We've heard that Facebook's working on that. We know that Sony is already a primary supplier for a lot of consumer electronics when it comes to these tiny little sensors. So hearing that PlayStation VR will have it integrated doesn't surprise me, because I think we may see innovations from Sony in the sensor itself. But HTC may have to wait for another few hardware generations of Qualcomm's processors before it can be something that's integrated. That said, we do see it on the Pico Neo 2i and the 3i, though we don't know what kind of trade-offs are there. And we know that we haven't looked in detail at the 3i, but we know that the Pico 2i actually used a completely different type of tracking system for the controllers. So it was only having to do the head and eyes rather than having to do head, eyes, and controller all through the cameras.
Mm. I was just going to add that there's a theme here. Then I hate sort of harping on this week after week after week, but it's so important to kind of understand the state of the industry. When you look at the example I gave before of the iOS messages now being an integrated feature into the Quest OS, and that was something that HTC did in 2016 and then disappeared. There's a theme here in that it requires just such concerted multi-year effort to iron out these bugs, develop the software in association with the hardware that really solve these problems in a lasting way. So foveated rendering and eye tracking is just another example where you've got to have such a strong investment in solving these problems, not just in the hardware, but on the software that powers it, in order for this stuff to work. And I just come back to this idea that Apple and Facebook and Microsoft and Google are the kinds of companies that have the number of people working on these problems to solve these issues. And HTC kind of isn't one of those companies with that kind of team working on the problems anymore.
Yeah, HTC has to rely on partnerships with companies like this for that. And, that does bring these features earlier to market. But as you say, there's a lack of this kind of integration and low cost offering that they just can't get by doing this piecemeal approach.
Keep in mind too that eye tracking itself is good for the foveated rendering, and that we know this. However, there is also, like has been mentioned with other headsets that do have it built in, that the eye tracking might help with position for throwing things or to look at something, or actual game interaction. And in order for that to occur, the developers need to have that hardware available to them, functioning, and in enough headsets that it's reasonable to add features such as that into their game. So keep in mind that this is a new avenue for ecosystem to grow in a different way, and it's going to mature over time. This isn't something that somebody's just going to go, okay, here we go. Eye tracking games are right around the corner. It's not going to happen like that.
Yeah, I brought this up over the weekend. It kind of hit me. Really, it's occurred to me a couple times, but it kind of really settled in that if we get the gaze tracking out of, it actually ships well and it works well out of Sony and the next PlayStation headset, and Valve is able to partner with Sony and get Half-Life Alyx on that system, the gravity gloves that you have on Half-Life Alyx could be way, way, way better. I know anyone that played Half-Life Alyx through to completion, I want to say it's about 9 times out of 10, or maybe 8 times out of 10, that the thing you're reaching for, or the thing you want to pull towards you, you're able to target first try. But I know it happens frequently enough that I'm like reaching for this thing and I pull over something right next to it instead. And that should not happen if you've got an eye tracked API. If you're able to pass along to the developer that the person is looking at that object and not that object, then you could have gravity gloves where every time you pull things towards you, it's the thing you want. And I almost wonder if when you look at the development of Half-Life Alyx, they developed the controllers, the index controllers, alongside Half-Life Alyx. And there's certain things like grasping cans that you can do more realistically. Like you can crush a can and kind of get the feeling of crushing a can more realistically in Half-Life Alyx. But it's absolutely not fundamental to the gameplay. And it's just one little thing you can do with the 5-finger sort of squeeze control that you've got with those controllers. But when I look at the Gravity gloves, I almost think that should get so much better when you've got integrated hand tracking, integrated eye tracking as part of the actual system.
Yeah, there's a lot of room for growth with this type of technology for sure. I mean, if they're selling it for, just to get back to the actual concept of why it's not integrated into these new headsets, $299 for the add-on, what would that have added to? I mean, obviously that's an MSRP, but what would it have added to the actual cost of the headset itself? So if it's an $800 headset, would it have been $900 or $899 with the eye tracking involved? So I don't know if there's some threshold they were trying to keep their prices. I'm not really sure what the logic is there. Don't know. I do like the company name. Droolon. I mean,
I believe that's the product name. The company name is that one, just the logo below. I can't actually read it from here, but you should be able to read it from
Seven
Seven, yes, that's it.
Invenson. Okay.
Seven Invenson. China's Tobai. That's all you need to know.
So the product is called Droolon.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
this is the Droolon F2. They had one before for the previous Vive headsets. It may have been the Vive Pro 1. I'm almost sure it was. This was before the Vive Pro I, obviously, where HTC released their own headset that had eye tracking built in.
Intriguing. Okay. Well, I guess we'll see how
May have
that
been the
looks
original
coming
Vive as well.
Q3.
We'll get it into it at some point on this studio, but like I would love to ask the commenters here, the viewers out there watching, would you prefer your eye tracking data to be analyzed by Facebook or a Chinese company? Which do you prefer? Which is scarier? Which is going to keep you up at night? I'd love to hear our commenters get into that one.
I would say,
Wow.
most of these eye tracking systems are, all of them are actually processing all of the data locally. Obviously, that's we can't verify that that's definitely happening, but according to these companies, the eye tracking data itself never leaves the device. It's all processed on device.
Imagine that, because there are devices out there. I've used them. I've seen them where it is a device that sits on top of a monitor, and it's watching your eyeballs as you scroll through websites or whatever, and it creates a heat map of where you look and what you look at first, second, third, what you focus all your attention on. So those devices have existed. I tried that. I think it was like 2014 the first time I saw a device like that. So that exists.
A Tobai sensor. There's probably a Tobai sensor that, that's what they were doing before they started making these components for VR headsets, and they still make that. One of the key uses for it is in research. Universities would typically have one.
Well, I was at a university, when I played with it, and it was scary accurate. I mean, I was actually really impressed at how much it knew exactly what I was looking at on the screen. It was very accurate. Yeah.
The commenters, I like the commenting responses saying neither of them, and I think that's kind of what Heaney is getting at with it being processed locally on the device. That's what Facebook says it does with the room tracking data, and they've obviously got the hardware sensor. We've talked about it before, but a light turns on, and that is the power to the light is connected to the cameras. So when the cameras turn on, the light turns on, and you're notified when that data gathering is actually happening. I'm curious if there's kind of like an equivalent for eye tracking when we get to that point of, is there a way to notify the user that your eyes are now being tracked?
You're being watched. Yeah. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. I mean, if somebody wants to sit and stare at a video of my eyes darting back and forth for, hours at a time, I mean,
Famous last words. I don't think eye tracking is going to be a big deal. I always remember the Matrix, right, with the lady in red walking by. That's always like the example I think of is if you can identify specifically what the person is interested in and how long they're looking at the thing, you can discern a lot about their intent, what they like, what they prefer, and it's going to be a big deal. But what will change it into not a big deal is good hardware architecture that makes it transparent to the user what's actually going on. Like that's why I bring up the light on the power rail and like why it's so important that people know when that light's on, the cameras are looking at you. People like to know that. And when we've talked about what Apple might do, there's the idea of the LiDAR sensor where I'm really curious to see if Apple is able to do the LiDAR thing where it's not actually capturing any visual data at all. It's just using LiDAR data. I'd be curious to see if that actually comes to pass.
Andrew King is just asking here if it's true that the cameras can't track without the green light on. It's the white light, I believe, on Quest 1 and 2. The light is white, but yes, that is hardwired to the sensors on Quest. There are some laptops that do that as well, where the webcam is actually hardwired to an LED. Some don't. Some actually have it as a software LED, which is quite strange because that can be hacked. But if you Google it, you can actually find a series of laptops that have that if you're very interested in security.
According to Facebook on the light thing, right? I don't know of any hardware researchers that are actually breaking. There was.
They saw it looked to be connected. I mean, I don't think they did an electrical engineering test, but it looked like it was wired to the same.
Well, we need to get enough YouTube members so that we can fund those teardowns and get an electrical, get the gauge in there and actually test these things ourselves because I want to actually test these things.
How long, Ian, on the other side of things, so as not to scare people with eye tracking, but how long before eye tracking discovers that somebody has, I don't know, glaucoma or some sort of eye disease and the eye tracking camera picks it up and notifies them of it?
It's possible. The research is out there that sort of thing is doable. There was an ailment. I want to say I can't remember what it was that could be identified. I wish I could remember what it was, but that's one of those frontiers where it is very scary to think that the hardware you're wearing on your head could identify that you're sick before you do. With that sort of insight into your body.
With some conditions already. Your Apple Watch will warn you if you have certain heart conditions. I could see Apple bringing that with their headset, though I don't think they would want to really advertise that these things are cameras. The eye cameras, they'd probably want to make sure that the only data ever being passed is just the output. But what really concerns me about eye tracking and privacy is if any of these companies kind of also track your pupil dilation. There may be some valid use cases for that, but that's where it starts to get kind of very creepy and problematic when it comes to inferring someone's intent, because the research shows you can infer a lot about someone's emotional state based on their pupil dilation at a certain.
You can also tell if they've been, having a good time on a Friday night, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, people talking about thought criminals. I set everyone off. I'm sorry. I made our entire YouTube audience spiral. We're all down the rabbit hole now. Let's get to the next subject. I'm sorry,
Ian.
Too much for a Monday.
What did you do? All right. Okay. Let's get on to the next piece of news here. Another Vive. HTC is going to love this episode. Vive Pro 2 wireless adapter does not support full resolution. When used with the Vive Pro 2, the Vive wireless adapter does not support full resolution or 120 hertz mode. So I don't remember the exact numbers, but I do recall that it was functioning at 90 hertz with about around 2K resolution.
It's quite far below 2K currently. It's my notes didn't update here, but it was somewhere around. So to start, the Vive Pro 2's display is around 2.5K per eye. So The current wireless and it refreshes at 120 hertz. Currently, the wireless adapter operates at somewhere around 12 or 1300 per eye. So if the maximum is about 2500 per eye, we know from HTC that they plan to increase that to somewhere around 1600, 1700, 1800 per eye. But even after that update, it won't be anywhere near the full resolution. So the problem is here, they're still selling the same Vive wireless adapter from back with the original Vive for this, and the technology it uses, first generation Intel WiGig, simply cannot support the full bandwidth needed to drive this headset. Now the question is, will HTC invest in releasing a Vive wireless adapter 2? I would say we probably would have heard something about it by now if that were the case. It would be strange for them to sell this one, but I think it's a big disappointment to the people who believed in HTC and, who, when HTC were the first to bring wireless to the consumer market, they jumped in. And it's just disappointing to see them not kind of keep up that pace, because we're now in the situation where you can have a Quest 2 with virtual desktop and stream at 2K resolution, 120 hertz, and yet you buy this $350 adapter from HTC, more expensive than the entire Quest 2, and it won't even run at 120 hertz or at beyond near 2K.
Do either of you two have one of these and have used it enough to have an opinion on it?
Well, that's the thing. My opinion of it is it's sitting in a box.
Mm-hmm. So I still have mine attached to a Vive Pro, and I've got the WiGig card installed and the little antenna doodad that they gave me. Actually, it's kind of funny. I took the bottom off of an old CV in a Quest, or not a Quest, a Rift CV1 camera sensor, and I took the bottom off of it and I screwed the WiGig thing on top of it, and it sits nice and pretty on my desk. I noticed that when I wasn't in a good spot where the sensor could actually see me, that it got blocky. I mean, obviously this is what you would expect when there's low bandwidth. Things get blocky, things get chunky, things get blurry. It doesn't surprise me that it's not doing full resolution. It doesn't surprise me that it's doing it's not doing full 120 hertz, because I feel like even at what it was doing, it was still slightly below my threshold for what I would expect from a device like this. So it was a good start, but I definitely expect to see improvements on the wireless capabilities. Like to Heaney's point, where's generation 2 of this device? Where's the upgrade?
The issue, or two things I got to get into, because our commenters are still going off about eye tracking, and we will get into eye tracking. And just the commenter there, Kyle was talking about drugs. It was a good time. Your eyes dilate when you're on drugs, and then the eye tracking could potentially do that.
Just to be clear, legal, recreational. Okay, just to be clear, legal, recreational. I'm not advocating for anything.
And then
other
Andrew's saying, "I was surprised that I stared us away from the eye tracking discussion." Yeah, we need to get into and stay on eye tracking again and again and again, because it's such a significant issue. It's just, we have to be able to sort between speculation and actual, like, what this hardware is going to do. And without hardware platforms that are really integrating eye tracking on a platform level, it's more in the speculation realm. And so that's why we're kind of going off on that. As far as
donation in the chat.
What?
Donation in the chat.
Oh yeah, thank you, Matthew. And I'm waiting for the rest of the comment to scroll up so we can respond to it. As far as the wireless Vive unit, I believe there was a partnership and some work done with Intel to get the chipset inside of that, if I recall correctly. And as we know, Intel kind of has been a tumultuous company in recent years. They, of course, they had merged reality. Was that their product, their marketing campaign? I believe it was. Intel merged reality. Is that right?
I want to say that's right. I think
so. They
had like Project, what was it, Alloy or something like that?
Yeah, so Project Alloy, and they also so they were trying to do VR for a little while there, And if you've never seen this YouTube video of Intel Merged Reality, it is them trying to throw their own marketing term into the VR market and define MR as like another thing called merged reality. And it's just this super expensive production where they tried to show you what VR could be in 10 years. And it was so frustrating, like just the worst kind of app of VR marketing, when you're showing things that the hardware cannot do anywhere soon. Point being, Alloy got canned, and Intel itself is losing a lot of its business in lots of different ways. And I think we need to see a partner like that working on wireless VR. And I do want to say that was an Intel technology that helped lead to the wireless adapter.
Yes, it uses Intel's kind of WiGig Generation 1. And just to be clear for anyone that doesn't know, WiGig is kind of a 60 gigahertz version of Wi-Fi. It's not technically Wi-Fi, but that means that it's a much higher bandwidth signal, but it can't penetrate walls. So that's why these are like this. There actually is a Generation 2 WiGig from Intel. I'm not sure if it's fully certified and ready for products yet. I need to double check. But I obviously Intel's focus is less wide than it used to be because they have to focus on competing in those markets they're losing, as you mentioned, Ian. But I do think if HTC wanted to, they could have made a new adapter with WiGig Generation 2. It's probably just that HTC itself didn't consider it a big enough priority yet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Looks like you can read Matthew. I'm going to try to pronounce this. Matthew Mazenholder. Hope I said that correctly. He wants to know, do you guys think we will get Ready Player One like movement with your real legs? Well, I'll tell you, when you watch Ready Player One and you see Wade jump on that little box and start running around, that's basically an Infinideck, which is a real product that I've used multiple times. Are we close? Close. We're getting there. How about that? How about we're working our way toward it, and we get closer with each iteration of headset and external add-ons. But yes, I mean that exists. That is a real product that you can run around on, and it's getting there. It gets better every time I try it. So
Wasn't
yeah,
it?
Don't hold your breath, but it'll happen soon enough.
Wasn't it? I want to say, I think Palmer Luckey had a tweet out there, the Oculus co-founder, suggesting that Portal should be used in association with the Oculus so that they could do full body tracking. I think it's an obvious thought that a lot of us who have been looking at Portal have been wondering why not integrate Portal with Oculus data. And I believe Facebook's head of VR, Andrew Bosworth, has said that, it's just not there yet or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like the overlap between these markets doesn't make sense for integration, but we want the Oculus app on there so we can do everything you can with your phone just with a Portal. And it makes a lot of sense to me. I'd be more interested in buying a Portal with that sort of integration.
Yeah, leg
Hey,
tracking
cool.
probably
I
is-
got Matthew's name correct. Awesome, man. That's totally awesome. Glad to hear that. Okay. Well, do we want to talk any more about Vive, or should we move on to our next company? All right.
Let's move on.
Okay. So, next piece of news is Microsoft is absolutely working on a consumer HoloLens. Microsoft reconfirmed it is absolutely working on a consumer journey for its HoloLens AR headset, even if that's some ways off. Now, I have been very fortunate. I was a member of Microsoft's first HoloLens Academy, where I wore a HoloLens for several hours a day and have actually gone a full day of wearing. Now, this is the HoloLens 1, the OG one. So much, in fact, that our team of developers actually coined a term that if you wear an OG HoloLens for too long, because of the way it sits on your head, it puts this very interesting bar right across your forehead, and we were calling it Holo Halo. And it's pretty nuts to think that HoloLens 2, with its incremental upgrades, because HoloLens 1 was not ready for prime time. It was not ready for consumers. And HoloLens 2, the incremental updates that they've made to that feel like there's still maybe a iteration 3 that needs to come out prior to going full on consumer. But there's a lot to be talked about here. So I don't know, Ian, if you want to kick us off
Yeah,
here with some other.
the comments. Did you take down the actual word for word comments here, Heaney? Because it was very strong comments from the head of the HoloLens project, Alex Kipman over there. I've had a sit down with Kipman several years ago now, where he outlined that yes, there's the whole spectrum of mixed reality. They use the term mixed reality to very clearly say they want to cover both AR and VR with everything. They want to get everything there. And I remember in that interview he indicated that yes, he thinks the lenses could change, right? That you could go from transparent to opaque with some kind of hardware down the line and get the fully virtual or just augmented reality out in the real world. To your point, Kyle, I don't know how many generations we have to go through to get to the consumer hardware, though. The comments from Kipman are very, very strong in that they know they have to do a great job in consumer, but it's just when we talk about Apple and Microsoft, these are companies that have been burned in the past in the same way kind of Google feels it was burned by getting into things at the wrong time. If you go back and look at Kinect, Microsoft was trumpeting the original Kinect as like the fastest selling hardware product in history back when it came out. And then a few years later, it was just a dead platform, dead for consumers, dead for developers. And here we are years later where they've like re-released they're still iterating on what the Kinect did, but it's not a consumer platform anymore. It's a dev platform to build for something in the future.
Okay, so Radical App Dev here in the chat has said, I've tried so many times to rationalize the purchase of a HoloLens 2, and I just can't bring myself to spend that much. I hope they can make something under $1,000. Now, what we're talking about here, and thanks for that comment, by the way, we're talking about value. When you talk about the value of a VR headset such as the Quest or the Vive or any of them out on the market right now, the Index, you see the value because you say, hey, play this game, maybe use this app, maybe healthcare, this, that, or the other. The HoloLens is a marvelous device. It really is a marvelous device, but the value for an end user, a consumer, not even a prosumer, just a consumer, is not there yet because number one, it's still not quite ready in terms of performance, in my opinion. And number two, there just isn't enough content to get this out there in the wild and it to be rationalized to make this purchase. And it's all about value. Microsoft has a long way to go to make the argument that this is a valuable product for a consumer. It's getting there, but again, we're on a journey. This isn't a sprint. This is a marathon. And I think at the end of the day, Microsoft will have a product out there. Not at the end of today. The end of the day meaning down the road, that there will be a product that will come out, a HoloLens, maybe 3 or 4, that will provide the consumer with what they're looking for.
So I want to read Vexner's comment here. Thank you for the donation, Vexner, and I would love to hear Heaney respond to it because Heaney pays really close attention to these things. So Vexner's comment is, Zuck stated the exact form factor and feature set Facebook was working toward. Glasses that can switch back and forth between AR and VR. Why is no one talking about this? He didn't say it was a wish, but a roadmap. What do you have to say to that, Heaney?
Well, we listened to the same interview from The Information. The Information is one of our kind of most trusted sources when it comes to finding out these sort of things. What I would say to that is, again, the distinction between a wish and a roadmap here is kind of not particularly meaningful because what he's talking about, the technology simply doesn't exist. He can pour his billions into R&D for that technology and hope that it eventually exists, but there are a lot of people that still argue that that is a pipe dream. The idea of having these compact AR glasses, the size of sunglasses, that can change instantly from being AR into full immersive VR, it just doesn't seem like it's going to be practical. Maybe in 15, 20, 25 years, we'll see that kind of convergence of form factor. But for now, it's like trying to have your tablet and your phone be the same. Sorry, your laptop and your phone be the same thing. Lots of companies have tried it, but there are practical engineering differences between something this size and something this size. And just like with glasses, there are differences between something that has to be absolutely tiny and 70 or 100 grams at most, and have a little tiny battery in the side of it that powers the whole thing. I don't see that kind of convergence happening anytime soon.
See, I am going to, only because I'm an optimist here, disagree and say it'll happen within 5 to 7 years. I think we will have those glasses like Zuckerberg is talking about in 5 to 7 years. Write it down. Remind me. 5 years.
We've got them today. They're just terrible. So like you can go and get these shades that you can fit over your AR glasses to turn them into VR glasses, and it's just a terrible experience. It is going to hinge on field of view and whether you can make optics that automatically shift between transparent and opaque. I don't think we're going to see those optics anytime soon. Maybe in the 5 to 7 year time frame, we'll see some kind of optics that do something close to that. But I'm thinking it's going to be closer on Heaney's timeline that. But the thing the field of view is the other kind of driving factor here, where we know we've harped on this again and again and again, that the current field of view of VR is way more than the state-of-the-art AR headsets. And year after year after year, we are waiting for the field of view of VR to expand out yet again. And I think the reason that's not been happening so far is there have been other priorities on the list of things to do with VR that were more important. Let's get it wireless. Let's get it self-contained. Let's get an actual product ecosystem with good software for accessories people want to add on, as well as software people want to play and download. Those were all the things that they had to do first with VR for us to get a compelling product. But this is the famous chart that we kind of see. Facebook has worked out the right weight that they are going to want to see out of these products down the line. And the one over on the left, VR, where you've got full control of the pixels and the best mixed reality, are the things that are going to drive opaque display, VR-based AR. So you've got cameras and other sensors supplying you with real-world data that can provide you a great AR experience. So, Kyle, if your timeline that you're saying for 5 to 7 years is that VR headset that does great AR, I'm there with you. But I don't think we're going to see the optics change to show you like real, just raw photons from the real world through just transparent optics in that time frame. That's the thing that's 15 to 20 years out, in my opinion.
Here's why I'm optimistic on this. Is think about the technology and how it's changed even in the last 5 years. I mean, 5 years ago, nobody knew how to pronounce Fresnel correctly. Everybody was saying Fresnel. Even I was, because I had never heard of it before. But that technology has been around for quite a while, and it doesn't take much to take something like that and adapt it. And then there's pancake lenses, and there's all sorts of other things. You're probably right, Ian. I am being optimistic, and it will probably be somewhere in the middle of the long range and the short range, because that's how things like that average out. But I think that we are less than 5 years away from having a really solid VR headset that can do MR with pass-through. I do believe that pass-through is the key here. I think that as soon as we get pass-through on the Quest,
Absolutely.
that's going to make a big difference. Heidi, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. We are going to see, I mean, VR, AR headset is almost the wrong kind of words to use. If we look at this, this is the distinction we should be making. There's two different devices here. On the left, we have something that uses cameras to pass through the real world onto an LCD or OLED or micro LED. It doesn't matter what kind of display, but a display that lenses then magnify into your eyes. On the right, we have something that passes through optically transparently, just like your glasses, but adds on extra pixels on top of that. These are the two different types of devices. And the difference between them is probably going to be quite similar to the difference between your phone and your laptop. You'll take the one on the right outside when you're going in the real world, you're going out to walk, because you don't want to be seeing the real world through a camera. I don't think that's going to be practical for obvious social reasons. But then when you come home, you're not going to want to be limited by a device that has to, weigh a couple, 50 to 100 grams and use only a few hundred milliwatts because it has to have a little tiny battery to fit into the glasses frame. You're going to want to put on this advanced mixed reality headset. But as you say, this headset will probably in 5 to 10 years, the one on the left, be thought of just as much of a mixed reality headset as a VR headset. Perhaps the term VR won't actually last for these headsets. I suspect they might even just be called headsets going forward in the long term, because if they can do this rich mixed reality, why wouldn't that be as important as the virtual reality that they can provide?
I'm looking forward to seeing what the TikTok generation decides to call these things when they're much more mainstream.
Yeah, and he needs explanation there. He used the word pass through in the reverse of the way that we're using currently in 2021. We're talking about pass through AR as like the reverse of the way Heaney just described it. And to your point, yeah, these terms are going to be defined. Did you see I wish we'd uploaded it to our dashboard here, but the bingo for Twitter debate, the bingo card, where we're going to come back to this argument again and again and again. I'm done with the Twitter debates about defining these terms because it's just so tiresome. Yeah, mixed reality is, I'm looking forward to this VR headset that does great AR, and you can see it a little bit in the Vario super high-end systems where you really are layering these two things on each other in a really great way. But when we've got the stuff that I'm convinced Zuckerberg is playing with over at Facebook, to sort of this Quest Pro that they're working on with better sensors, I really want to see how far that device gets us to this really great mixed reality product.
Yeah, I think that there's probably an entire room at FRL, Facebook Reality Labs, that probably has, here's a headset that does this awesome, but does everything else terribly. And here's a headset that does this great, but doesn't do everything else it needs to. And I think there's going to be a lot of that coming out. I think there's going to be headsets that are wonderful on one thing, and then the rest of it. Now that's a snazzy looking headset. I would wear that all the time.
I think this was their concept of what that kind of headset on the left, what we called it a VR headsets, might look like in the future. But the idea is that's still using an LCD or an OLED display. You're not actually seeing real photons from the real world come through, and it can be used for as much as mixed reality as it may virtual reality.
This has nothing to do with anything we're talking about, but it's been reminded me now. Ian, do you remember at, was it Connect 5? Maybe? I don't know. They had multicolored quests that they were doing, that Dead and Buried Arena. Where are the orange quests? Where are the blue quests?
Right. I wanted those so bad. I would love to. I bought this. VR Cover is really onto something there, because you can go into VR Cover and select their multicolored, facial interfaces. I'm wearing a purple one right now.
Yeah.
Where I've got like their really. Yeah.
Yeah, I have two. My two girls, my two younger kids are. They both have OG quests, Quest ones, and one of them's red and one of them's blue, so that way they know whose is who. And plus, I mean, come on, red and blue. That's just, it's far out.
Yeah, I can't wait for us to get to that, because you're getting to the point where with the next, they had to prove out VR with Quest 2 still, right? The first
Hmm.
generation was just black, the second generation is just white. And I think the next generation of consumer focused hardware from Facebook will probably get some of those color selections, because you're going to want to go pick up the orange one or the blue one, and uh, be able to easily identify which one is for which family member pretty
Yeah,
soon here, because you're going to
yeah.
get multiple devices for your family.
See, I had one of those cool clear phones from the 90s, late 80s, early 90s. I wouldn't mind a completely clear. Where is that? Who has customized a Quest 2 and made it completely clear shell? Show me a picture, please. Challenge out to the interwebs.
Yeah, that'd be great too. Well,
It would.
the problem is you're blocking out the outside world, so you gotta do both those things at the same time.
Yeah, it'd be a challenge for sure. So, do we have anything good here in the comments? Looks like we've had quite a number of interesting conversations going on here. Let's see here. Something about washing machine and dryer. Clear would be awesome. See, Sampler 19, thank you. Let's get that. Let's get that going here. It would be terrible for. I understand the practical reasons of why that's ridiculous, but I think there might be a way to make it happen in some way, shape, or form. Somebody's out there rolling their eyes right now, going, "He doesn't understand."
Kyle's
Yeah,
out
I
there
do
pitching
understand.
one way. You're pitching one-way glass on your headset. I want one-way mirrors on my headset. Yeah.
There you go.
So one last thing I'd say about HoloLens 2 is that the most interesting line for me in this interview, where we learned that Microsoft is still working on a consumer HoloLens, though we don't know when that's going to happen, was the phrase, he said, "You can't shape an industry unless you're in consumer." And I thought that was very interesting to hear, because, there's often this assumption that Microsoft might want to stay in the enterprise market where it's kind of safe and they can see what they know the future path there. There's not this hefty consumer competition and things like content and marketing. And we know that Microsoft historically hasn't done as well in consumer as it is to be able to do with business. But it's interesting to hear Kipman kind of stated very clearly, because as you were saying earlier, Kyle, for example, with eye tracking, it's not much use to have eye tracking on these headsets unless the content supports it. And even in a business context, if there isn't an ecosystem of developers that have built up to develop this kind of thing for these consumer hardware, it's going to be a lot more difficult for these companies to bring these features in. So Microsoft seems to recognize that if they can launch a consumer HoloLens, the benefits of that are going to ripple through to its business division as well, not just for consumers.
And a lot of people don't realize this, but that's brilliant to say that the consumers have to be involved in order to shape the industry. I mean, VR didn't just magically pop up in like 2011 and here's VR again. It hasn't been talked about since the 90s. No. There were plenty of companies out there that were selling was it WorldViz, I think, had a $10,000 headset that was tracked with OptiTrack. I mean, $10,000, and it wasn't even. I mean, it was cool, but it wasn't consumer ready. I mean, those headsets have existed for quite a long time with no consumer action. As soon as it gets on a Kickstarter and becomes available for the common man, now it's under $1,000 and does all sorts of amazing things, and there's huge amounts of innovation that have occurred. So yes, consumer is how you mold the industry. Absolutely.
To bring that full circle a little bit back to HoloLens again, I want to bring up Illumiroom, which was this amazing project from Microsoft researchers, I think, that they had a projector and they also projection mapped your living room. And they projected really impressive things all around your living room. So if you were able to sort of map the entire region around your TV and then throw a projector onto it, you could have a first-person shooter where everything in the center of the first-person shooter is perfectly in focus. And then the living room is sort of like your peripheral vision, and you don't have to show everything out there at the same resolution. And you've got this sort of more immersive experience where maybe you're out there playing the shooter and you see some person that's out there on your bookcase, but it looks pretty good on on your projector, you turn the shooter with your gamepad to point at the left a little bit, and you're able to spot someone in your periphery that way. And they were able to show off various concepts like rippling that would go out into your living room, and environmental effects, music visualizers that would just be so immersive. And you're able to get this much higher field of view essentially out of your TV experience. And I think of basically the route that PlayStation tried before Morpheus and before PlayStation VR, where they had the Move controllers, where you could actually use the Move controllers to navigate your menu, and you obviously had Kinect back in that time period. I still I still kind of wonder whether Facebook or whether Microsoft knows that they could do really, really, really awesome experiences if they just know the layout of your living room. If they know that that's a couch you're sitting on, that's a table there right in front of you, that's a bookcase. If they know what the objects are in your room, and then they give developers tools to build on those objects, we could get all they have to do is ship a wireless headset that talks to your Xbox and get some of that software information down. And like you could have really, really cool experiences just in that one room of your house. Like you could do some really, really amazing mixed reality games. If you think back on that I can't think of Dr. Grodbert's Magic Leaps game, where things are breaking out from your walls. You could really, it's entirely different class of video game than we've seen out of Facebook.
Microsoft had for the HoloLens Robo Raid. I can't remember. I think they changed the name of it or something at some point. But yeah, basically, I did it in my living room at home, and I put the headset on, turn it on, the game. All of a sudden, my wall breaks open, and all this stuff starts shooting out of a hole behind the wall, and it's interacting. It's crawling up along the side and up on the ceiling of it's very fun. It's very novel. Of course, I'm shooting like this at them, so that's not the greatest input ever, but
that's why it gets me real excited for the potential of PlayStation VR 2 this next generation. And I really hope that Microsoft makes a go at it with Xbox VR, because we can do some amazing games in the living room with knowledge of where the walls are and your furniture is, and leaving those as surfaces for games to come out of.
Do you think if they come out with an Xbox headset, they should call it the V-Box? Do you think? I mean, I don't know.
I hate it. I hate it.
You don't like
I
that?
hope
Okay.
I like everyone that uses the eye roll emoji. Please use that more often when Kyle gives really bad puns and stuff. I just love seeing it in the comments, and I think he appreciates it too.
Yeah. Also, when you do that eye roll emoji, then that's just me tracking your eye movement. So it all comes around full circle. I like that. What do we got up here on the screen? This looks like Unity.
So I was just going to sort of say that what you're talking about in terms of using the geometry and the layout of your house and your room, that is the future of all mixed reality gaming in general. And we'll probably see all of the major platforms adopt this. I think we may even see Apple start from that perspective next year. What this is Unity Mars, M-A-R-S, capital letters, if you want to Google it. And it's their project to actually enable developers to build those kind of games in Unity. So it's this idea of a semantic understanding of your environment. So they can say, this is a table, this is a couch. And there are a lot of questions about how are games going to have to be developed like this, because it's going to be radically different than every other kind of game we've seen before, where developers build an environment that you traverse through. In this, the developers are given the environment that you have and must kind of create a content stage within that environment. So we're going to have to see, Mars uses machine learning. We're going to see all sorts of applications of machine learning in this, because how can you make a game that runs in two different rooms that look radically different? Someone might have an apartment in Tokyo and another person might have a mansion in the countryside, but they both need, if you want to build a game that can be sold to millions of people that may own these kind of headsets in future, it needs to run on both of those. that is one of the hard questions that Unity Mars is currently trying to challenge, and I'm sure we'll see Apple's attempt at it next year.
I mean, I don't have a coffee table, but I have a couch. But you know what? All houses, well, I shouldn't say all, but most houses have a floor, a ceiling, and walls. Hopefully, it's going to be very difficult because I could see mapping a room, and then kitty cat comes over and you push him out of the way, and along with it goes your ottoman that was already mapped, and now suddenly there's a feature that's supposed to be there that's not anymore. So the staticness of the environment is where I'm kind of wishy-washy on this whole concept. But I'm willing to give it a try, and if it works, then I'll be all in on it.
Yeah. A lot of software. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of software layers there that need to be ironed out. But I think there's enough evidence that these big companies are trying to develop. That Mars is a great example. But if you go to Pokemon Go, there's the reality mesh feature. It's a reality mixing. I can't remember what it's called, but you can sort of activate this extra layer of filtering that happens with the Pokemon Go AR, where like if you have actual objects moving through your space, it tries to segment the foreground and the background in real time. And you've just got so many layers there that you do have to assume, tell the player you need a flat surface for this that's raised off the floor, and you've got a game. Demio is our perfect. We love Demio, and it's playing perfectly in this place where they've done a lot of assumptions here to make sure you can play this in a room with 4 walls and you can tilt up the table. But I would love to have that game be playable on an actual table as well.
Absolutely. I hope a lot of you don't have black leather furniture and bare walls, because a lot of this tracking really has a hard time with you need a noisy, busy room with a lot of contrast and craziness going on for some of this tracking stuff to work. I've seen entire rooms that are just like abysmal for tracking for some of this AR stuff. So, start getting some tacky stuff in your rooms. It'll help your tracking a lot better.
Of LiDAR that we see in the current top of the range iPhone and the current top of the range iPad. Because of how it works, it actually sends out signals to be able to see the depth of your room. So even if it's completely featureless, it will be able to see the geometry, because that is one of the big challenges in mobile AR right now. If you ever use smartphone AR, you'll notice that you need to kind of pan it all over your room for it to get a sense, and maybe you even need to stand up and scan it over here. And if you've got a very Spartan room, it actually won't work at all. So for AR to be practical at all, we'll need to see depth sensors in this hardware.
Yeah, I agree. Well, okay. I think this has been a nice, fun topic conversation. HoloLens 2, HoloLens 3 might come out for consumers someday in some form. I'm excited about that. We got eye tracking. Notifications. I'm still waiting for a notification to pop up from my phone. I guess nobody likes me enough to send me a message, except for you wonderful people who are out in the YouTube chat right now. Obviously, if you're watching this live on YouTube, you have the ability to interact with us, and we talk to these folks all the time as they make content and questions and comments. And we love that. But if you're listening to this on the podcast audio only, well, we like you too. And feel free to leave comments after it's live, and we can check it out and still try to interact with you. Ian, do you have any final words of wisdom for our lovely audience before we part ways?
Just keep tuning in, subscribe to us, become members, support our work. We are working hard to answer these questions, verify information, and make sure that we provide the best source of news and information you can get in the VR industry. And we'd love to have your support in doing that. So thank you for tuning in, watching us, and check back in the future. We'll be back on Thursday with games.
Heaney, what do you got any final words of wisdom for us all?
Yeah, I would just say that, as with every week, I'm very impressed with the quality of the comments here. Look, Traveling Man 3775, you're absolutely right to say that the current semiconductor shortage this year means that we won't see as many hardware launches. But you put the optimistic kind of view on that and said that means that once this shortage is over, we're going to see an explosion in new hardware and products, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Totally awesome. Well, as usual, go check out uploadvr.com and go to our like and subscribe and influencer, blah, 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 blah. Do all those things because it helps support us. Thank you. That's awesome. Ian, Heaney, good show. Thank you all very much for watching. We'll see you in the future. So long.